are Smart City Navigators, a podcast about innovation, sustainability, and new technologies on the market.
This podcast is brought to you by NaviParking. Our today's guest is Marek Stawinski. He's a system thinker, innovator, visionary leader, and serial entrepreneur with over 25 years of managerial experience in enterprise architecture for the telecom and banking industries. Leading the diverse international IT and smart city related projects, he supports open solutions and open innovation. He is the founder and CEO of NaviParking and Software House. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Marek Stawinski in our today's episode of Smart City Navigators podcast. Hello, Marek.
Hello, nice meeting you again.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. Future is bright, so
positive as always.
Yes.
I would like to very welcome you in the next episode with you. And today's topic is also very specific, but it's very important in terms, not even in business, but also in human relationship. It's how to build partnership in business. And the first question is, what's your definition of partnership?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. During my professional career, and especially when I was a chief architect at a large corporation, I was chief architect at ABN AMRO Bank, and then UPC, Liberty Global. And I learned that when you have a meeting with someone who wants to sell you something or comes with a solution, for me it was always very important to understand what is the motivation besides the money. Because usually someone wants to sell you something, but if I get a feeling that this something can be a part of something bigger, long term, so we can create value together, not just by buying that solution, but treating this solution as a part of the bigger picture and a longer term, objective, that is the very good reason to start partnership, and it doesn't have to be formalized. We have partnership agreement. This is like, we can build it up. And in the course of our interactions and implementing a new project or new, adopting new product or, application, then we learn each other better. And my strategy was always to build good relationship with these people. And that can turn into partnership. And partnership will allow us to deliver something for the future. So it's not about just short term, but it's about long term. Mm-hmm. And in that context, it's, I think, interesting to share a concept which was defined by one of the French professors, that what is important nowadays, when all these innovations do take place and new products are coming to the market, it's important to create a so-called minimum viable partnership ecosystem. It's like comparable with minimum viable product in typical lean startup definition. That's like another level, because bringing just a minimum viable product on the market can be also dependent on the way how you interact with partners, how much partners are involved in launching of this new product. If you have good ecosystem of partners, your I would say success can be much more, I would say, you can be more successful in this what you are doing, because it is supported also sometimes by big partners. So the art of building this partnership agreement is how you can demonstrate your value as a small company, like startup, to a bigger company, and together you can bring something on the market what is future proof, and then allows you to be successful.
With your experience, what's the biggest challenge in creating partnership?
What the biggest challenge is, I think, is a level of trust. You have to trust each other. And in typical commercial kind of situation, someone wants to sell something, you want to buy something, it's of course You have someone wants to sell you for the best price. You want to buy it for the lowest price, and it's all about what you get. So there is a lot of talks, but in that process, if you realize that it's based on a real value and the intentions are good, and you can see also potential of this product, of this solution, and potential of that partner, you build this trust relationship, and that is something what is, I think, essential in order to start partnership agreement. Because putting this on paper, it's not enough, because it's essential that organizations learn each other, trust each other, because they depend on each other. So commitments are also met, and so on and so on. So it's a long process.
And building trust, this is very deep topic. Maybe you can have some advices for other businesses how to build the trust between partners.
Yeah, maybe I can refer just, it reminded me about my experience with one small startup where I was at that time a chief architect at UPC, based in Amsterdam. And there was a startup which was quite aggressive, selling as a solution, but they were struggling a lot. There were lots of issues around, implementation. But after a few meetings, I realized that it has really huge potential, but they were just not mature enough. So my role here was that I became a sponsor of this startup, and I started to guide them towards higher maturity in this what they were doing. So I was helping them to become also a member of the organizations I was participating in order to put more emphasis on standardization of this what they were doing. So by making this standard, that the product could have much higher chance to be successful, but also for us much it was very important. So I think my advice would be try to find the way how you can also contribute to their product, the their offering, their solution. If they see that it's not just pure based on money, that they sell you something, you buy something, but you also in the course of deployment of that solution which you bought from them, they can also learn something from you, and that can contribute to their product. I think it's a good starting point to build longer term partnerships. Yeah.
You mentioned about corporations and startups.
Yeah.
Is it easy to create a partnership between these two entities? Because corporations are large companies and startups might seem like very small companies. Is it easy to create a partnership?
To be honest, it's very difficult. Yes, it's very difficult and very challenging. And why? Because corporations, they have own speed of action. Startup doesn't have that much time to wait for decisions, to negotiate, to discuss the same topics with different parts of organization. So for startups, it's very challenging to build this kind of partnership. Now, pandemic, in fact, helped startups a lot, because what happened, pandemic impacted corporations very often in a negative way. Corporations started losing money, or the revenue streams have been impacted. So they were forced to look outside and look around. And one of the, of course, potential partners for them, or companies they could work with, are startups, because this is the place where innovation is. So my experience from the last say 18 months is that it's much easier now to find a corporation to work with, and it is just a matter of time, because all these impacted corporations are in the middle of transformations. They are reorganizing, they are trying to optimize the processes again, because they are very badly impacted by the current economical situation. So what it means is that it's very difficult to find decision, makers, which can really sign agreement. So startups needs to be patient, but they have to be sure also that corporations do need them. Corporations do need their innovation. So it's now very good time to build this kind of partnerships.
When I was doing a research for this episode, I speak with a friend of mine from corporation world and from startup world. And I tried to compare these two worlds. And people from corporation, they say that they've been looking for some solutions during the pandemic, let's say, for example, and they found those solutions inside the startups. And before pandemic, a friend of mine who's working in a corporation, he said they didn't realize that startups, they already done that before corporations. So this is the crazy world, because corporations, they think that startups are very small companies and maybe they have no clue how to solve some corporation problems. But the thing is, the startups, they have so many solutions right now.
Yeah, that's correct, because startups are very agile. They respond to market changes very, very fast. And, maybe this is example what I like very much. For example, Boxy, Polish unicorn now, so it's a scale up, now. But they were in a very bad shape. In fact, they were forced to lay off like 50% of employees. And they managed to change the business models in a very fast pace, and now it turned to be a very successful company, which is acquiring other companies. So that is an example that startups have lots of, agility, and with a good leadership in place, they can, even in such a difficult times like pandemic, they can be very successful. Corporations, on the other side, they have very long decision-making process. The dependency in different departments cause, slow down, the execution, from idea to execution process. So, per definition, startups you can expect will have much more, not only ideas, but also, deployed, executed ideas than corporations. That's why corporations are so keen to reach out to startups and get them on board and then make them part of the corporation or implement their products. So there are different strategies. Some of the corporations, they just buy these startups.
Maybe it might be like that corporations are gonna, I don't know, eat up the startups and just merge them and to buy them.
Yes, of course, it is a big danger, and in fact also danger for corporations, because when you buy startup, there is a high risk that this startup agility, the innovation DNA would be killed by corporation culture, which is, that's very much different than a startup culture. So it's not that obvious that corporations, the best way to buy innovation is to buy startups. The best is to just keep them independent, but ensure that they have enough money, funding, to grow, but do it in a own pace, innovative pace, and also within own culture, innovation culture. I had this in the past, this kind of discussions when I was a part of a corporation. It is very clear for corporations that buying company is not the best solution, because if you don't protect that company and you make this a part of the corporation, then corporation can negatively impact the startup and in fact can kill the whole innovation spirit of startup. Yes, I don't think it would be a goal, because they would do it for sure not on purpose, because they would waste money. But one of the results, unfortunately, could be that after acquisition and making a startup a part of this big corporation machinery, the whole innovation speed would be negatively impacted. So that has to be very well discussed and managed. And in my view, is much better to fund that startup, put some management on, maybe as a supervisory board, ensure that the startup is developing further, the products which corporations would like to, sell themselves on the market, and then maybe make them apart and create like a separate division. So that's a part of M&A strategy, and also a part of innovation strategy, which it's not that clear. It depends very much on the context and the geographical location, and also the I would say demands of the market, and a competition also, because it could be that startup, the same startup, could be a target of another corporation. So you have to be careful how this develops.
Maybe do you have some real life example from your experience when corporation trying to let's say maybe not merge with the startup, but just to put the right people in a directory board, and then startup grows?
Oh, that's an interesting question. This is quite difficult, because some of these acquisitions, when they take place, or funding of the startup, sometimes, very often in fact, is a subject of NDA agreement, and it's not really that clear what exactly, for example, who is behind the investment, and what are the agreements. But I can maybe mention another case that you have to be very careful when you acquire not only startup but another company. For example, Nortel, Canadian, very successful company. This was during telecom. In fact, it was around internet bubble. So telecoms were growing very fast, and some of them, telecom, related companies, some of them thought that they would become also software companies. So they were buying software companies, but this was a failure. They didn't make it. That in this particular case, they were not able to change the culture from the typical hardware engineering type of company to a software DNA. So they had to sell them back, and then Nortel is a kind of a case where it wasn't successful. So if you Google on the internet, you can see what happened. Yeah.
So from this point of view, maybe it's a little bit hard to have a vision on the future of startup, because startup can sometimes be merged with corporations, but they can also have their own creative vision for the future. But how to scale that up? Because we have to scale.
Yeah, it's the ultimate goal of every startup is to scale and become global. Go global, and this is very challenging, and it's not easy. I think one of the ways to be successful in scaling your startup is building this partnership ecosystem of partners. Because if you can demonstrate value to your partners, and together, based on synergy effect, bring on the market something unique, then your position, from the startup perspective, can be much stronger. And also you can rely on distribution channels, and also global presence of these partners. And this is something what we try to achieve, and we try to partner with global companies, which hopefully can help us to go global as well. That's an idea.
Maybe we can give some tips for people who's going to listen for this episode. What's the ultimate goal in partnership?
To be successful together, and also create a kind of a synergy effect. The partnership makes sense only when 1 + 1 is 3. So if you put together, your teams, products, technology, you can bring something on the market what has unique value to the customer. So my advice would be, look around who you can partner with, and try to identify a unique value proposition which could be result of working together. That's, I think, the key, to be successful in partnership, but also to ensure that it is future-proof partnership. And very often, what I try to promote is agree like a transparent revenue shared agreement. So all the parties involved in bringing a product to the market, they can count on part of the total revenue. So it is then the relationship is then future proof, and it will be based on mutual interest, to be successful together.
This sounds like a very healthy relationship.
Yes. If it is simple, transparent, then I believe really that this is like a fundament of your success on the market and success to have potential to scale.
This is well explained, and I really love the idea of trust. You mentioned trust before, and the trust might be a very a ground layer of the relationship.
Absolutely, but it starts from teams. Our team, for example, they need to trust each other to ensure that they build something together what has a chance to be successful on the market. Then our partners have a trust that we have good teams and supporting them and bringing this together. So it goes on a number of levels, and but I think it's essential that the startup, I would say DNA, startup culture, is based on trust and teamwork, team spirit. I think it's essential to be successful in building this partnership agreement, because the partnership agreement cannot be just a result of one signature on agreement, because if you want to build together something new, then you need to work together. So you need to ensure that your teams are working together and they trust each other, that together they bring high quality product on the market. They have to have conviction that this is really something what brings value for both companies. It's not like very often you have like a kind of a feeling, engineers, they like own babies. Sometimes there is a partner which maybe has another baby, and it's important that engineers do realize that working with the partner can lead to much more, I would say, more babies than which can be protected by both teams. I think that's a key, in building this ecosystem of partners. Yeah.
And also in partnership, the flow between people is very important. How do you feel about this?
Yes, it's all about communication, and the way how you also ensure that it's clear for everyone what is the objective of such a partnership. We have at this moment a number of partnerships. One is public, one with Autopay, and that was a result of a joint effort of both teams on both sides, and I believe everyone on in our company, in our startup, really has a clear understanding what is the value of that. We see this is really something what contributes also to a vision of connecting two platforms together. And if we can make it happen and it works on a large scale, it means that we can also invite other partners having own platforms for cooperation. So we can become, as a team, supplier of services to other companies, our partners, having own customers. So the customers of our partners can consume our services via our partners. So it doesn't have to be like our app. It can be app of our partner, for example. So you don't have to be, it's important to realize that it's about end customer, and that we have to do it together, and we can be more successful interacting via our partner with the customer than, for example, doing this directly. Of course, we do it, both ways, but in some context, it could be much more beneficial because, for example, in case of Autopay, the user of Autopay app doesn't have to care about parking. They don't have to care about our app. they just use one app. So it's about convenience. So if you look at this from that perspective, then you understand that it's not that we just have to promote our app. Like, if you are developer and you develop, our app, and then suddenly you hear, but in fact we do not promote this app anymore. No, we do promote, but for that particular group of customers, it's much more convenient for the customer to use an app of our partner. And that has to be very well communicated, and because that will accelerate also innovation process, but also it's good for motivation. Then everyone realizes that we create the value together and not just on our own. Yeah.
I want to know your private opinion about your own obstacles during the creating relationship. What's the hardest part to create a relationship in your definition, in your experience?
I think a lot is about also people's egos, It's, that's, I think, one of the challenges. And, very often I experience that it's all about, people, So it's very important that you understand motivation of people on the other side. And if you realize that, someone, is really, protecting like own domain, or is more inclined to promote own concepts, not being open to, share this concept with, for example, with us, that's a red flag. And very often, you should just reconsider if this is really worth, further pursuing, because in this kind of situation, you are not sure what is exactly behind the motivation of that person. So identifying this ego type of challenges is, I think, one of the key things you have to do from the very beginning. And in the course of time, maybe there will be someone else coming, because this is all about people, as I said. And partners have all kinds of, people involved in this kind of processes. So you might be exposed to someone else who is much more open and understand the potential and doesn't approach it pure from own perspective, private perspective. So I think this is key, in order to be successful. And I've seen it a number of times myself, and I think it's just a matter of time. You have to just take your time and just wait for right moment and right people to do it.
So now, private question. How do you manage your own ego?
I was transforming myself lots of times. I started here in Poland as a software developer. I was doing embedded software engineering, and I was very good in that. I always thought I could do it best. I didn't want to give anyone a piece of my work. It was always always for myself. And then when I was in Holland, suddenly I got promotion and I had to manage a team of people. And it was for me a huge challenge, because until that moment I had, my own software to develop, and suddenly I had to manage a team. And it was a kind of learning exercise for myself to understand how to delegate, how to work together with the teams. And then in the course of, my career, I learned that, you have to just let it go. Your ego is not really relevant. It's all about your team, and it's about your, partners you work with, because they make you successful. So very often I learned to step back, and to make 2 steps ahead. And this is my strategy. I was doing this, especially, for example, when I was at the UPC, I survived 13 years. Someone even told me that I should become politician because I survived like 3 CIOs I was reporting to. And how I did it? I did it exactly that way. I gave up my ego. I just was listening more, and then sometimes selling my ideas to others and made them happy to sell on my behalf. And for me, the ultimate goal was that this eventually was executed. So my advice to everyone is just consider making step back sometimes, because then it can help you to make 2 steps further ahead, and then you can be successful. So I don't know if it answered your question, but this was a long journey. It didn't happen overnight. It took some time.
Especially for young businesses, for startups, also for young entrepreneurs who starting a business or even starting a company, it's a very good lesson. Just 1 step back, breathe in.
Yeah, because people are impatient. I also was impatient, and I always wanted to promote my ideas when I was in a meeting, but then I realized that in that kind of situation, very often you become a target, because you come with something can be very bright, really very good, but just because of this it is coming from you, they would like to kill you.
It's a problem.
Kill the problem, So it was much more effective just to do it in a little bit different way, and because if you have your company, objective in mind, company success, not your own success, then it's very often much better to do it in a different way. Not everyone has to know that it was your idea or it was you behind. If you do it, in such a way that eventually it does happen, is the most important. Yeah.
Thank you, Marek. It was a very nice episode.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
And I hope to see you on the next episodes as well.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Smart City Navigators podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Join the conversation by leaving a comment and sharing your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, in which we'll do another deep dive into a topic related to innovation, sustainability, and new technologies. See you next time.